time to talk some BYU offensive line. We've talked about the centers. We did that last week, talking about Connor Pay, but we need to talk about the guys next to him on either the left or the right. Those are the guard positions for BYU. At left guard, we all know about Clark Barrington. I've been talking about him the past couple of weeks with all the preseason All-American citations he has garnered. I believe he's up to 5, maybe 6 preseason All-American citations. He is going to be an absolute stud for BYU for the 5th year running, it feels like. He has just been a stalwart at that left guard position since returning home from his mission. He is a guy that I expect will be an NFL player this time next year. I don't necessarily know that he gets drafted much higher than the middle rounds of the NFL draft due to a combination of age, because he has served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the fact that he's maybe not the most athletic offensive lineman. But the one thing that Clark Barrington will always have over anybody else who lines up across from him is just this tenacious, innate want and will to win. He is the guy that if you're in a dark alley and need somebody to back you up, I'd have Clark Barrington behind me. Not only because he's listed at 300 pounds and he's just chiseled, it feels like. The biggest thing is, though, he's the guy that in the proverbial phone book that is playing defensive line, playing offensive guard against a defensive lineman, you've got about a 3 foot by 3 foot square that you have to win on any given down. And that's what Clark Barrington relishes in doing. He plays the game with a nastiness that not a lot of offensive linemen have just in their back pocket. It's just something he's always had since coming to BYU. And that's what I love about Clark. I've got my depth chart once again here. So Clark at left guard is obviously just locked in as a starter. His backup currently is listed as Tyler Little. And if Tyler Little emerges this season as an offensive lineman for BYU, what a story that is. This is a guy who served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was playing basketball at a JUCO in California. The football coaches kind of saw what he was doing. If I got the story right, he decided to make the transition to playing football and started playing for his JUCO program and showed enough promise that BYU said, hey, come on down. We'll take you and see if we can develop you. They list him currently at 6'7", 285 pounds. 6'7" is very tall for an offensive guard, but it's not a thing that it's not about height at guard. It's more about your ability to win in a confined space. At a tackle position, which we'll talk about here, probably on tomorrow's show, we'll talk about guys like Blake Freeland. They've got as big as maybe a 10-yard circle to work in against defensive ends and outside linebackers. As an offensive guard, you have got a tackle on the outside of you. You've got a center inside of you. You've really got about a 5-foot square circle that you're working within, and you have to win one-on-one battles a lot of time, and you're working sometimes in tandem with a tackle or a guard on a double team, but you have to win in a confined space. And a guy like Tyler Little, if he continues to emerge, that could be very promising, because to see him listed as the backup, the lone backup at left guard, means to me that BYU coaches see something in this young man. And like I said, a former basketball player who has gained probably 40 or 50 pounds since making the transition to football and probably hasn't even topped out at what he'll play at the collegiate level. There's a lot of intrigue there. 6'7", 285 pounds. As I mentioned, Clark Barrington is 6'5", 302 pounds. So there's some nice beef at the left guard position. Now at right guard is where there's going to be, I think, a nice position battle during fall camp for BYU. We talked last week when we talked about the center position that Joe Tukuafu could end up as BYU starting center if Connor Pay slips at all, or if Joe just proves he's the better option at center and it just creates the best combo of offensive linemen for BYU. Now, Joe Tukuafu is currently listed with an or next to his name at right guard, with Campbell Barrington, yes, the younger brother of Clark Barrington, as the co-starter there at right guard. Campbell Barrington came in last year when Harris LaChance got injured, put together a freshman All-American campaign, and is a very, very promising player. I can tell you this because I don't think I'm breaking any stories now that weren't out there or haven't been out there. But I can tell you this much. When Clark Barrington was being recruited to BYU, the thought was that BYU was trying to get Clark to get to Campbell, because Campbell was thought of as the more highly sought-after prospect. They list him at 6'6", 295 pounds. So he's got some of the height that his brother doesn't have. Maybe not as thick as Clark is right now, but Campbell is only a sophomore for BYU, whereas Clark is a redshirt junior with it potentially another year to play for BYU if he were to elect that. I don't think he will, but Campbell Barrington is a very, very good football player. If Campbell is a guy that you simply cannot keep off the football field, that's where the conversation comes in about moving Joe Tukuafu over to the center position just to get the best 5 offensive linemen on the field. The good news is for BYU along their offensive line in particular is, as I have talked about previously, they go at least 10 deep for BYU. That is the talent base that BYU is working with And the nice part is if any of these offensive tackles that BYU has on the offensive line aren't necessarily standing out at tackle or they need some extra seasoning, you can move them inside to guard and let them get their work there. That is the positive for BYU. I believe at the guard positions for BYU, you've got a three-headed monster of starting caliber guys. Those include Clark Barrington and Campbell Barrington and Joe Tukuafu. But that's to say nothing of a guy potentially coming up like a Kingsley Suamataia. We're going to talk about Kingsley when we talk about the offensive tackles because that's where BYU lists him on the depth chart. But if a guy like Harris LaChance and Blake Freeland are guys you simply feel like you can't move out of those tackle positions for BYU, or Campbell Barrington shows better at right tackle than he does at right guard, or heaven forbid at Braden Keim, who we'll also talk about at guard, at tackle, is standing out there. You could kick Kingsley Suamataia into the guard and take advantage of his natural physical play. That's what Kingsley brings to the table. He's got tackle type skill in terms of his ability to bend and absolutely just thrive out there in space as an offensive tackle. But he has an innate nastiness similar to Clark Barrington that shows up on his film. And the hope is maybe if you moved him into guard for a year or two, that he could really show something at that spot. Kingsley is listed at 6'6", 330 pounds. There is no physical development needed from this young man. He is as physically put together an offensive lineman that you will find that's a redshirt freshman in this entire country. So, is somebody like a Kingsley going to be slated to maybe move inside and upend what we already think is a very strong guard contingent for BYU? Only time will tell. Other guys that you can keep an eye on at the guard position, they're probably a year or so out in terms of really competing for playing time, include the likes of Donovan Hanna, 6'4", 300-pound redshirt freshman, played in one game a year ago, a former tight end who gained a bunch of weight on his mission, just kind of grew into his frame, and BYU said, you know what? We're going to move you to offensive line. He's got to keep an eye on, as is some of the guys coming into the program. Vai Soifua, a 6'4", 290-pound freshman. You have Sony Makasini from Timpview High School, 6'3", 335 pounds. He is just an absolute bowling ball in his own right. Peter Falanico, 6'3", 315 pounds at Pineview High School. And also Sione Vecoso. Now, I probably should have mentioned Vecoso a little earlier on. Vecoso is 6'7", 325 pounds, a freshman from Arizona State, a transfer from the Sun Devils. He is a guy who prepped in Hawaii, went to ASU, has served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and is now at BYU as a 6'7" freshman. And listed at 325 pounds, he screams a guy that can play tackle. But similar to the conversation we had about Kingsley Suamataia, could a guy like Sione Vecoso, if he's a guy that you feel like, okay, we need to get him on the field, could you kick him inside to guard and let him develop there before moving him back out to tackle? That happens all the time at elite programs like Ohio State, Alabama. Some of their future stars at tackle actually spend maybe their first or second year in the program seasoning up at guard before moving out to tackle. It's a great way to get talent on the field while at the same time you're not worried about them giving up a blindside sack at the left tackle position and saying, oh, well, that was the abject failure. You give them the time to develop at their own pace. What I love about BYU's guard positions is they're well stocked. Like I said, a preseason All-American in Clark Barrington. You got Joe Tukuafu, who is a multi-year starter there. You have a freshman All-American in Campbell Barrington. And who knows who else might emerge at that guard spot. What I love about BYU's offensive line is the depth and the talent of it. They are set up for success this season, and they are set up for success moving into the Big 12. The offensive line for BYU might be their chief strength going into Big 12 play in 2023 offensively. I'm serious about this take, folks. And the funny thing about it is they could lose as many as 4 guys off this year's offensive line as they go in to the Big 12. Think about that. When I say that could be one of their chief strengths, that shows you the depth and breadth of the talent for BYU. And what I love is the guard position sure looks like it's set up for success right now, similar to the rest of the offensive line, and set up for success moving forward long-term as well.